Hey everyone, it's Sharpe from the 440th here, and today we're going to be running the SAP Simulated Attack Profile number 2 from the AGAT Advanced Ground Attack Training course. This one calls for an Oka strike against Kumni, and for those that haven't flown this before, the attack profiles that we fly call for a relatively zip-lip comms profile, flown to a very tight time on target, plus or minus 10 seconds of the briefed time on target, and flying at low altitude doing tack turns. So there's lots of training in here for stuff we don't often get to do that often for varying reasons. We all get very carried away with throwing precision guided munitions. We sometimes forget there's fun to be had using these dumb munitions and elements of the aircraft that perhaps we don't engage with that often, like the carrot and flying to target. So this was taught to me by former serving members of the RAF that were operational back in the 80s, early 90s, and I'm relatively comfortable that the stuff that we do in this course resembles RAF tactical doctrine, at least from that period. Whether it reflects modern tactical doctrine or not to the letter, I'm not so sure. But it allows us to fly in a profile that resembles RAF tactical doctrine from about 20-30 years ago, and it's good fun, and that's the main part of all this. So the briefing for today is going to be a package of one ship, one flight. It's the AGAT 2. Target is Kumni Air Base. We are Voodoo 1, which is a 4-ship flight. We're only going to need the 2 of us today, micro obviously, but there is up to a 4-ship, so I'll ground abort 3 and 4 once we've got good jets. Voodoo 1 will be hosting data, obviously. I'll do that at the EOR. We're VHF 15. We'll be up front at about 11:51. We'll be using TACAN 1174 Yankee. Joker is 4,500, Bingo is 3,500, and we'll be looking to taxi at around 1,200 and take off at exactly 12:05, or maybe a few seconds before, with a time on target of 12:25.22. We've got Sentry 1-1 as AWACS on Uniform 6, and we've got Texaco 1-1 as air-to-air refueling on Uniform 13. We shouldn't need it. The profile gets us home with about 2,000 or 3,000 pounds of fuel left, so we'll only hit the tanker if we feel we want to do a bit of tanking on the way home. So the threats for today, there are ground threats on this profile. It is a step up from the AGAT 1 profile. So over the flot on our flight path there are no threats, but there is SA2 and AAA around, but it shouldn't be on our flight path. From the flot to the target area, we can expect AAA and SA2 at various points. Over the target, we can expect AAA and possibly MANPAD. And from the target to the flot, we are expecting AAA as well. There are no air threats in this SAP. Today's targets, per the briefing, is going to be the left side of the runway for Voodoo 1-2 and the right side of the runway for Voodoo 1-1. The weather at takeoff, target and RTB is all the same. We're going to be yellow 1, wind 090 at about 20 knots. The success criteria is going to be that all targets are destroyed plus or minus 10 seconds of the time on target. A partial success will be that one or the other of the runways is destroyed plus or minus 10 seconds, and it will be a fail if either target is hit but outside of the contract time on target plus or minus 10 seconds. And we are not going to accept any casualties for this evening. The spins for tonight are very specific because of the zip-lip nature of the profile. As a result of that, there is certain departures from 440th SOP that need to be observed. So as I go through the spins, there'll be an awful lot on the zip-lip profile. The loadout for tonight is fixed. We'll be doing a low throughout the flight. Air-to-air refueling, as discussed, is available on the route home. For the zip lip comms, now it's worth noting here, when I say zip lip, we're not just going to sit there quietly and fly the whole thing without saying a word. I dare say it is possible, but we will do certain amounts of communication, but the point is that it's a much reduced profile to what we're used to flying. So pilots won't be speaking on VHF or uniform unless it's absolutely required, i.e. it's a flight safety, flight emergency situation, or if responding to a directive call on VHF, in which case pilots reply per SOPs. Flight members won't be making calls on uniform except if speaking directly to the AWACS and tanker, and for the uniform check-in, it will just be a case of Voodoo 1 check-in on uniform 6, 2, 3, 4, and that's that. I'll only speak further if I've not heard you. Don't expect me to say all heard or anything like that. I'll just chase you down and get you onto the comms I need you on if there's a problem. So critically for all this, because we're running a silent profile, all the turns in this are going to be silent, delayed, tactical 45 and 90 turns. They won't be called. The person that's on the outside of the turn will initiate the turn. The person on the inside will know that turn is coming because it's on your HSD and your flight path marker. You'll be watching your wingman and you will turn when he starts initiating his turn, when it's ready to do so for that delay turn. If he goes low and he's not giving you space, you need to go above him. If he's gone high, then you can slot in underneath him. It's the pilot's job to decide who's doing what, and we're all big and grown up, so we should be able to work that one out. The HSD and the HUD are going to be your primary means for situational awareness, as well as the TACAN indicator in the DED. That gets you close to knowing roughly where your wingman should be, but you are going to have to look out the window quite a lot. So you're going to be looking forward, then you're going to be looking at your wingman, quick sweep around, make sure there are no threats, and then just keep going around that cycle. Don't just expect to be able to hold formation because your TACAN looks like it's good and the HSD and the data link are showing you in roughly the right position. You might have to adjust. So keep a good eye on your wingman, and that means that you do have to fly relatively close. Having flown this a few times now in AGAT 1, we're looking at about 0.3 to 0.6 nautical miles being about the right sort of area. But as long as you can see your wingman clearly without having to hunt for him, you're probably in about the right place. The pilot on the outside initiates the turn. Don't wait for your flight or element lead to make that call. That's critical. The fence in, fence out is also silent. You'll find on the flight path some gates. Where those gates cross the flight path, that is your fence in and then your fence out position. It's a silent fence in and fence out. Again, it's a case of being big and grown up. There'll be no comms check for that. It's just fly through the gate, lights off, master arm on, and any other fence checks you want to complete. The training lead, which will be me for this flight, even though Micro, you'll be leading the flight. The training lead will use the radio call unnecessary comms in the event of any unnecessary comms use during the flight. This is a learning aid, not a telling off. It doesn't require a response, but don't take it too seriously. It's just to help everyone who's on comms. If you say something that is perhaps not really needed for the flight, I'll just tell you that and you can note it and move on. So for takeoff, again, another departure from 440th SOP. The takeoffs are going to be paired formation takeoffs with no separation, despite the fact that we are carrying air-to-ground ordnance. The element leads will advance straight into gate. They won't roll out at buster and then go into gate. It'll be straight into gate, minus a little bit of thrust room from the element leaders, just to give your wingman a little bit of room to catch up. And the element leads will be holding gate, minus a little bit of thrust room, until you match the carrot speed on takeoff, at which point it's flying to carrot. It's up to the number 2. If you want to leave half a second of separation on the runway, just to give yourself a little bit of room, that's your decision as a pilot. Just get yourself back to where you need to be once you've allowed yourself that little bit of margin of error. So formations, there's going to be a 30-second separation between the elements. We don't need to worry about that because there is no second element today. But if there was a second element, you would be inputting a new time on target of Rolex plus 30, and you'd be flying to that carrot 30 seconds behind your lead element. On takeoff, wingmen will fly fingertip, or as close as we can get to fingertip without being silly. We're not the Red Arrows or the Thunderbirds or anything like that. You want to be close so that you don't have to make your element or flight lead work for it, but not so close that you're going to be scraping the paint off their jet. The element lead will perform a wing flash, which is a high angle wing roll, to signal the wingman to move from that fingertip position into the spread formation that we will fly for the rest of the flight. So obviously if you're close enough that you could crash into your lead when he does his wing roll, you're too close. So again, it's just a little bit of common sense and consideration from the wingmen. So once we've moved into the spread position, we're in that for the rest of the flight. It doesn't matter which pilot is flying on the flight path marker on the HSD. The element can sit on either side of it, the flight lead can be on it, the element number 2 can be on it. It doesn't matter, it's up to the flight lead to decide where he wants his wingman, or the element lead to decide where he wants his wingman. But if you find your flight lead creeping across, you've got to maintain your contract as a wingman and move out with him. It might be that he's trying to push you into a different position. Again, he's not going to tell you to start moving away and that he's moving. You've just got to keep an eye on him. So once you set up on the target, as we turn out of the IP, number 1 is attacking the right side of the runway, number 2 is attacking the left side of the runway. If you find that as we roll out on the IP to target that we're not in that profile, the flight lead will do a wing roll to signal that he wants the element to perform a shackle turn. When the wingman sees that wing roll, he'll wait for his flight lead to go straight and level, then he will initiate the shackle. The flight lead or the element leader will then see that the number 2 has started that shackle, and then will then shackle across, and then you'll be on the right side. Again, that's a silent maneuver. The only time you need to call it is if you're getting too close to the target and your number 2 is consistently ignoring that wing flash. Just looking through the rest of these notes here. Yep, each element will be attacking their target simultaneously, so don't lag into trail, don't go ahead of your wingman, be with him. Your flight lead is going to be flying to carrot. You've got to trust that your flight lead is on carrot and stay with him. Don't go ahead of him, try not to go too far behind him. You're going to be almost in perfect spread. You might slide a little bit into echelon, but broadly speaking you need to be very close in time and space to your flight leader. On fencing out, the flight lead will immediately move into a route formation. Again, this is not a signalled formation, it will just be a case of you've crossed that second gate, you've fenced out, move into route. Once within 20 nautical miles of Osan, which is our recovery airbase, the flight lead will request an overhead brake from the approach, and the flight lead will then call what position he needs his flight to be in based on what information the tower gives him. So if the tower says that we're to land on 09 left, you can expect your flight leader to bring the flight into echelon right for an overhead brake. Just listen out to the tower comms, that will give you the information you need to hear as a member of the flight. A couple of additional notes just at the back end here on the contract speed and contract turns. The contract speed for the whole route aims to be 420 knots with the following exceptions. Takeoff will not be at 420 knots because it's not possible to go from 0 to 420 knots in half a second. Therefore you can expect to be above the contract speed for that leg. Then the IP to the target, and as we come off target, will be at 500 knots. That is because the profile over the target with Durandals requires a faster airspeed, and you don't want to be over the target any longer than you have to be, and it gives us some speed to play with as we come off the target. The contract speed is the essential point in terms of flying to carrot. So what that means is, while 420 knots is the ideal speed, and that's what the flight plan states, we will fly to carrot. And if that puts us above contract speed or below contract speed for whatever reason, we always fly to the carrot. However, you might find that your flight lead decides to slow down or speed up in order to move the carrot closer to the 420 knot contract speed in order to maintain a good speed over ground and also not to burn fuel by going too quickly. Again, as a wingman, you watch your flight or element lead and you make sure that you are sticking with him no matter what he does. The contract turns are again a slight departure from what is taught during the 440th IQT. These aren't lazy jumbo jet turns at high altitude. These are as much an evasive maneuver as anything else, so you can expect to pull some Gs in these turns. The only cautionary note is do not over G your jet. You're carrying stores, but expect 3, 4 or even 5G turns as you whip around the corners on these turns. They're not nice slow Dumbo jet turns. You got to look at what your element lead or your wingman does if he's on the outside of the turn and adapt to what he does. If he does a slow lazy turn, whether that's right or wrong, you've got to do a slow lazy turn as well. If he does a hard turn, you've got to do a hard turn. Again, it's just that element lead wingman contract. You've got to maintain the positions and don't make your element lead look for you too much. Other than that, that should be it for the spins of the flight.
Voodoo 1, Osan Tower, wing 090 at 12 knots, runway 09 right. You are cleared for takeoff. Contact departure.
090, 12 knots, Voodoo 1. Osan Tower, Voodoo 1, switching to departure. Osan departure, Voodoo 1, report airborne at 500.
Voodoo 1, Osan approach. Resume on navigation.
Voodoo 1, push 6.
Altitude. Altitude.
Altitude. Altitude.
Voodoo 1, Chalice 1, Voodoo 1, chicken in
Altitude.
extract, bolts,
Altitude.
139er at 068, description.
Voodoo 1-1, Sentry 1, picture clear.
Copy clear, Voodoo 1.
Altitude. Altitude. Pull up, 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 pull up. Altitude. 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 pull up, pull up, pull up, pull up, pull up, pull up. Altitude, altitude. Altitude, altitude. Altitude, altitude. altitude, 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 altitude. Altitude, altitude. pull up, 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 pull up. Chat, flare, chat, flare, chat, flare. altitude, altitude.